Welcome to another show. Today, we'll look at the top 10 horror comics ranked by several comic book sites. See the credits at the end of this video for details. Number 10. Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Terror. Ahoy Comics is an independent publisher known for their sharp wit and satire. The comic anthology series, Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Terror, breaks down the barrier between horror and humor with a sledgehammer. The eponymous Edgar Allan Poe often breaks the fourth wall at the forefront of each issue, snifter in hand. Classic Poe tales like The Mask of the Red Death and Nevermore are comically retold. Artists in this anthology series let their imaginations loose to capture the essence of the darkly comedic stories, ranging from grotesque illustrations of 18th century illnesses to a Quaker Oats-inspired monster cereal. The comic series doesn't fall flat like the House of Usher. The Snifter series continues the snarky terror in the sequel series Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Blood and Edgar Allan Poe's Snifter of Death.
How did you come to be in France?
Bunch of bad decisions.
Number 9. The Walking Dead from Image Comics. The Walking Dead is one of comics' biggest success stories. Now one of the most popular shows on television as well as a series of critically acclaimed video games. It's easy to forget The Walking Dead's humble comic book roots. Writer and creator Robert Kirkman set out to create the definitive zombie apocalypse story with the long-running series, focusing on a small, ever-dwindling group of characters who are constantly on the run from zombie hordes as well as other survivors with ulterior motives. The Walking Dead is a sprawling, gritty take on the zombie mythos. Like most great horror stories, the focus is on the survivors rather than the ever-present threat of zombies. But readers are forced to accept from the very beginning that no character is safe. Few comic books are as relentless as The Walking Dead, and the series is always changing its dynamic in bringing in new elements and enemies to keep up the tension so that its readers are always kept guessing what could possibly happen next. Number 8. Crossed from Avatar Press. Horror fans looking for a completely different take on the zombie apocalypse need look no further than Crossed. Series creator Garth Ennis is well known for pushing the boundaries of sex and violence in comics, but he truly broke disturbing new ground with his foray into the horror genre. After a mysterious plague rapidly spreads across the world and turns its infected victims into manic psychopaths, small bands of survivors are forced to find a way to carry on in a very dangerous world. While the premise may sound familiar, the infected and crossed are completely unlike those in any other horror story. When infected by the virus, victims are branded with a strange crucifix-shaped rash across their face, which makes them relentless cannibals who commit seriously disturbing acts of violence. Although they act and look like feral beasts, the crossed still retain some level of intelligence and are able to use tools, weapons, and even traps, and they all derive a twisted, perverse satisfaction from the heinous acts they commit. Explicit and seriously disturbing, Crossed is really not for the faint-hearted and will test the nerve of even the most desensitized horror fans.
Number 7. Harrow County. Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook from Dark Horse. Titan of the horror comic industry, Cullen Bunn combines his talents with artist Tyler Crook in the highly acclaimed horror comic, Harrow County. Creepy ghouls from your worst nightmares crawl out from the shadows in this 32-issue comic series published by Dark Horse Comics. A young woman grows up familiar with the monsters shifting around in the woods around her home. However, the night before she turns 18 years old, she unearths a truth about herself that irrevocably changes her future. Harrow County's art and renderings of ghouls amplify the fear factor tenfold. The mass appeal of one of the best horror comics in the market stems from stellar storytelling, sympathetic characters, and images that will superimpose themselves on your brain for weeks. Number 6. Tales from the Crypt. We couldn't not include this classic from EC Comics. Although modern-day horror fans may think that some of the stories from the original Tales from the Crypt series published in the 1950s are a little bit cheesy by today's standards, it's hard to underestimate the influence and impact the series had on the comic book industry. Along with other horror titles of the time, the pulp horror anthology came under attack by the United States Congress in 1954, as critics believed that the content of such comics were contributing to things like juvenile delinquency and illiteracy in schools. This led to the establishment of the Comics Code Authority, which massively restricted the type of adult content, like violence and sexual references, allowed in comic books, and the horror genre was outright banned. The series lived on as a popular spin-off TV show, which drew inspiration from some of the inventive, classic horror stories from the original comics.
Nightmare I told you about, the one I keep having when I'm petting Bambi. You gotta help me, Doc. I'm losing my mind.
Number 5. Jughead The Hunger from Frank Tieri, Michael Walsh, and Pat and Tim Kennedy. Even the sun-splashed Riverdale kids aren't safe from the horror treatment. Archie Comics created the horror imprint, Archie's Horror, to expand the Archie universe and reach a broader audience. The Afterlife with Archie and Vampironica comic series created alternate universes where the famous Riverdale teens are turned into zombies and vampires. But everyone's favorite, food-loving kid Jughead, gains an insatiable appetite for flesh in the Archie's Madhouse comic collection, Jughead The Hunger. The conceit of this comic series arises quickly. Jughead's never-ending hunger originates from his family's legacy as werewolves. Is there anything better than a gory story where Jughead turns into a werewolf and can't stop eating? Illustrations of Jughead ripping through flesh look cinematic. The narrative throws plot twists at readers with no warning, moving the pace along like a wolf on the prowl for his next victim. Jughead The Hunger is gruesome and not for the faint-hearted. The Archies don't have time to sing in a comic where werewolves are involved.
Number 4. The plot from Michael Morecki, Tim Daniel, and Joshua Hickson. Vault Comics dominates the comic market with horror publications. The plot is only one of the best horror comics Vault has to offer. Titles like The Autumnal, I Walk with Monsters, and Hollow Heart all should be recommended for horror comic buffs. Yet, the plot makes this list because the comic series boasts powerful storytelling and illustrations so scary your heart will start pounding erratically. Psychological horror and bug creatures twist a man into their branches of death in the plot. Growing up in his ancestral home built on an ancient bog pushed one of the children far away from his family and hometown. Now an adult, he is horrified to find out that his brother and sister-in-law were murdered. Given the responsibility of caring for his brother's children, he moves them into the old home on the family plot. Demons of the past return in physical form, shadows lingering on the comics pages. The plot paints a portrait of mental health, familial ties, the monstrous vegetal as man grapples with mental trauma and ancestral secrets.
Tell me, if Pearlie told you to take a jump off Tower Bridge, would you do it?
I know what you were doing.
Number 3. Hellblazer from Vertigo, DC Comics. Although John Constantine has faced seemingly unbeatable foes and even fought alongside some of the biggest superheroes in the DC universe, the Hellblazer series is at its best when it's grounded in some seriously creepy and unnerving horror. The long-running series followed the exploits of a British magician and occultist who faced off against the darker sides of the supernatural, paranormal, and religious worlds. Constantine is always quick with a quip or joke, but he is a troubled, conflicted character who deals in shades of gray and someone who knows that they have to get their hands dirty at times for the greater good. Sadly, Hellblazer was spun off into a different Constantine series as part of DC's new 52 lineup, and the character subsequently lost a lot of his bite. However, some of the earlier runs by writers like Jamie Delano and Garth Ennis are required reading for any horror comic book fan. Number 2. Scooby Apocalypse. DC Comics reimagined Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters in the Hanna-Barbera Beyond comics. One of these mature, dramatized takes on a classic animated television show is Scooby Apocalypse. Prepare yourself to yell, zoinks, and jinkies repeatedly when reading about those meddling kids and their dogs as they battle a frightening zombie horde in an apocalyptic world. Ever the brainiac, Velma Dinkley and her brothers created technological advancements to better humanity. Scooby-Doo can talk, thanks to a Dinkley prototype device allowing genetic canine enhancement, but one of Velma's inventions mysteriously goes awry, inciting a zombie apocalypse. Velma was able to protect Shaggy, Scooby, and their new acquaintances Fred and Daphne inside her lab. Unfortunately, the gang is forced to both survive against the undead and solve the greatest mystery of their time: how to end the apocalypse. Scooby Apocalypse retains its heart while modernizing the look and traits held by the beloved Mystery Incorporated characters.
You never light a cigar that way. You use a wooden match. Preserves the flavor, you see?
Number 1. Hellboy from Dark Horse Comics. Mike Mignola's Hellboy is a genre-mashing superhero comic with a difference. The titular character is a demonic paranormal investigator who works for the good guys. He was originally summoned from hell by German Nazi occultists during World War II, but Allied forces intervened and raised the young demon, and battles all sorts of creatures and evil forces from the depths of horror legend. Part detective, part globe-trotting, ass-kicking super agent, Hellboy maintains the pulpy charm of vintage horror comics, but it can also get downright scary when it wants to. Mignola's atmospheric artwork is a visual treat, and his stories are always entertaining and creative romps in the world of horror.
That was our show for today. What did you think? Do you read any of the comics we discussed? What's your favorite horror comic book? Let us know in the comments section below, and I'd consider it an honor if you subscribe to my channel, share this video, and check out my own Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise in the comments section. Until next time, this is Axel and for Kevin Given saying live long and prosper. May the force be with you and keep reaching for the stars.